Here. Stop being so loud. Hey guys, welcome back. It is July 1st, and honestly, we got pretty hot over the last week and a half. We were very hot and humid and completely different than we've been all spring long, and the garden has really taken off. But then I ran into another problem. Last night, I was just going around the garden, just checking on a few things, and I noticed something with my onions where I'm just like, of course. Because the theme of this year is teaching Bree a million things she's never had to deal with in her 8 years of gardening. So after doing a little bit of research last night, I'm really just shaking it to be the really wet and cool spring we had, and then a sudden heat wave and humidity, because a few of my onions are bolting, not all of them. We are literally at the time where I will be harvesting. My first onion actually got pulled, was it 2 nights ago? So I'm starting to have some of the onions flop over, which is the sign to harvest them. So to my surprise, last night when I came out and saw a few of them bolting, I was completely shocked, because I've also never had a problem with my onions bolting. Typically, this is an issue if you start your onions from sets, but I've always started mine from seed, and typically I figured bolting would happen by now, but apparently this is a pretty common issue that ends up popping up from time to time. And I even read that some people say that anywhere from like 10 to 20% of their harvest will end up bolting. So that's kind of good to know, because apparently a lot of weather and temperature fluctuations can just cause the onion into thinking it's gone through its 2-year period. Because if you did not know, onions take 2 years to go to seed. So typically if you start your onions from seed, you're thinking you have that 2-year period just because they got started from seed. But weather fluctuations and a lot of different weather and stuff like that can cause the onions to be tricked into thinking they've gone through their whole cycle and they need to produce seed. So that is what we're currently dealing with. Like I said, there's a lot of them that look completely fine, but I do have a few that are bolting, and when they're bolting, you have to pull them. I'm actually kind of shocked I haven't ran into this issue, because I want to say this is my 5th year growing onions now, and last year they did really, really well up until curing. I had issues with curing, which was the first time I've ever had issues with curing, and then this year is the first time they've ever bolted on me. But we did have one of the wettest Junes since like the 1920s. I think I mentioned that in the last video. And we were so much cooler, really, than we've really been. At least I feel like we have. It was just a really cool and wet spring. And now that it's been summer, we really just, it went to summer so fast. So yeah, that's what we're dealing with today. They definitely don't look as beautiful anymore. They're in their dieback process. I expect to harvest whatever doesn't bolt in the next week or so, considering I already harvested 1 onion. But I'm not having any bolting in this bed at all, actually. But at least I'm gonna say that, and then I'm gonna look closely here, and then I'm gonna end up seeing something. No, not seeing anything sprouting over here. But the moment we get to this bed, everything looks fine, except this one back corner, which is just so interesting that it's all in one area, or kind of condensed to one area, because I think there's one over here. But as you can see, I mean, it looks very similar to a garlic scape. We have this one here. There's another one right there. I want to say this. Yeah, there's another one right here. And last night I did... I was kind of mad, and I just kind of ripped this one off, but it was right here. I saw it right here because I knew I had to grab that this morning. Ooh, that one is super tall and really thick at the base. So one of the reasons why you have to go ahead and pull the onion is because you guys just saw that last one. That stalk it's probably like this. So what that does is that stalk actually shoots through the onion and it actually causes there to be an opening at the top, allowing bacteria to end up going in there. So what they say to do if you see an onion that bolts is to go ahead and pull it and use it as quickly as possible. So I already have a few onions in the house and I don't have any onion powder at all at the moment. So I am going to pull these today and I'm going to freeze dry them into some onion powder. That is going to be my easiest option. And I told my husband last night, I'm like, for some reason I come outside and more of these end up bolting over the next week, which honestly, I'm not really seeing signs of anything else showing that. That one is so big. I'll probably just powder a lot of it down into onion powder, just because when you freeze dry like garlic or onion, it tastes identical to what it tastes like fresh. That's the one thing I love about freeze drying. So when I have a bunch of onion powder, it really just mixes in really well instead of just having onion. So it just makes it really easy to cook with. But I could also freeze some, which I am definitely considering. It's just I typically don't freeze my onions. But yeah, that's what's going on this morning. It doesn't surprise me. Honestly, it's so funny how many little things have just been so different this year. I won't even say necessarily go wrong, because it's not like the garden's fault. It's mostly the weather this year that's just been crazy. And then I had all that herbicide damage, but it's been such a interesting gardening year and I have literally learned so much. And that's the only way you grow as a gardener, is when you run into things like this, because you have to research it. You have to kind of see what it possibly could be otherwise and kind of go from there and adjust. And without it, you would never learn. So if you've been dealing with a hard year as well, just know it is literally the game of gardening and you become a better gardener from it. Guys, look at this thing. It is beautiful. Oh, the other thing I wanted to mention. So not only does the stalk cause issues with curing and they won't store correctly, this will also cause the onion bulb to not grow bigger as well. So it's one of those things, you don't want to leave it in the ground because it's not going to grow any bigger anyway. And at this stage, when the onion still looks healthy and good to eat, you might as well eat it while you can, because they could go south pretty quickly. We had rain come through the other evening, and what I did is with the wind block, I ended up putting it over top so then the ground wouldn't get any more wet. So that was the issue I ran into last year. We had so much rain the week of harvest that things just didn't cure correctly. So when you start seeing signs that your onions are dying back and maybe a few have flopped over, really cut back your watering, because when you cut back your watering, they tend to cure a lot better because they're already drying out a little bit outside. So I put a cover over top of these hoops just to make sure it didn't rain, and that was so handy. I really liked that. So I went ahead and just took the sidewalls off anyway, just because at this point they're going to be falling over. But if I do have any more rain coming through, I will put the tarp over top. And I've just really loved having these hoops in place for the onions. It really helped the onions be able to stay up nice and tall. And honestly, this is some of the most uniform harvest I've had outside of just having issues with the bolting. So I've really enjoyed that system. This one here is probably one of the better sized ones that ended up bolting. That thing looks really good. And then I think I have one more on the other side. This will actually be like the perfect amount of onion powder, which it actually works out because I've been wanting to make onion powder anyway. So I might as well just use what I have. This is the other one here. This is also a pretty good size onion as well. I mean, that's the size you buy at the grocery store for sure. I still love growing onions, even though they've been a difficult thing over the last 2 years. I just find them so rewarding, and it's something I use in my kitchen daily, which is always just an extra perk to me. While I'm out here, I'm gonna go ahead and just cut off any of these greens so I'm not dealing with those in the kitchen. These won't take long to chop up, so I'm gonna go ahead and get my freeze dryer on. All right, and while this cools for 15 minutes, I'm gonna get the onions chopped. And here's all the garlic. Turn off the fan for a second. As you can see, it's all looking really good. Soft neck is actually to the point where I might check that in a few days, but I'm gonna go ahead and grab the 2 onions that flopped over in the garden and add this to the mix just because that will fill up the freeze dryer better, and then I'm not worried about having to make onion powder for a while. It's actually really cool to see the difference side by side. So this is the 1 onion that flopped over naturally, and then this is the one that bolted. And you can see here's the stalk of that, and this one doesn't have one. All right, I got them cleaned up a bit, and now I'm just going to chop them up. By far, my freeze dryer is my favorite preservation tool. With canning, you have to have really large quantities, and then with drying, just everyday basic dehydrating, I do not like it for onion or garlic. It just makes it almost taste like it's a cooked flavor, and it takes forever. The freeze dryer gives you a really, really nice powder, almost identical to what you can buy in the grocery store. I can't stop crying. All right, guys, good morning. The onions are out of the freeze dryer. Took roughly, I think 22 hours or so. They got done about an hour ago. And all I'm going to do is throw them in the blender here and powder them down. They'll powder down pretty quickly. I did go ahead and already sterilize a few jars. I think this will probably take up roughly a pint. So yeah, I'm just going to blend this up real quick. Onions almost feel and look a lot like styrofoam when they are done being freeze dried. I will say, if I were to leave the onions just like this, I've done that, and it works really, really well for a soup or a stew or a chili. Outside of that, I find it a little bit more difficult to reconstitute and be able to saute them in a way where they will brown the way I like them. So if I leave the onions like this, I really like to use them in recipes where I'm not needing like a sauteed or caramelized onion. All right, here's a close-up of what I mean when I feel like they look very much like styrofoam and kind of feel and act just like styrofoam as well. But you can see they powder down almost instantly, which is really nice. All right, and now I'm just going to vacuum seal it. This is not necessary, especially if you're gonna go ahead and just be using it. But if you do want it for storage and you don't have a vacuum sealer, you'll want to get oxygen absorber, which looks like this. I'm just gonna take out as much air as possible because I don't feel like I'm gonna get to this right away, but once I open it, it'll be open and I'm not too worried about it. You can see all the air. So cool. And now that lid is on. I had what, 5, 6 onions, and some of those you probably count as one because they were just so much smaller. And I got a whole pint of garlic powder here. I don't even know how much this would be in the store for something more this size. I want to say for organic garlic powder around this size, you're probably still looking at a minimum of $5, and I probably got 2 to 3 times that amount for probably even less than that because I've been growing these onions from seed, which a packet is only a few dollars. I absolutely love stocking up my spice cabinet. At this point, I only buy a few things. I buy cumin, sometimes I will need something like ginger, but I freeze dry ginger, and I have a bunch of freeze dried ginger in my cabinet that I toss up. I love using my freeze dryer for my entire spice cabinet. It is just so amazing. So either way, this is my onion powder I made from my bolting onions. So when life gives you onions, make onion powder. That is where I'm going to end today's video. Thank you guys for joining, and I will see you guys all in the next one. Bye.